Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your Sunday. So really quickly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Starkiller and Rey. Um, you know, I'm a really big Star Wars fan, and I ponder issues related to Star Wars all the time. I'm constantly, thinking of versus scenarios in my head. Pitting different characters against each other in hypothetical duels and trying to ascertain which one will be most likely to come out on top. And so Starkiller is one of my all-time favorite characters. Probably my favorite character from Legends, and definitely one of my top three favorite Star Wars characters across both versions of Star Wars, canon and Legends. So a lot of I see arguments in the comments from people saying that Starkiller is OP or overpowered, as they put it. They even go so far as to call him a Gary Stu, the male equivalent of a Mary Sue. Anybody who's familiar with the newest Disney Star Wars movies will recognize that term Mary Sue. That term is often used to describe the character Rey, who is in episodes 7 through 9, and so I see people increasingly making these comparisons between her and Starkiller, saying that he's just like her, where he's automatically good at everything. And I just want to talk about that really quickly, because I personally think that's an absurd false equivalence. I think, based upon their histories, they could hardly be more different in their upbringings. So, just a really quick summary of where they come from. Rey was growing up on Jakku for the first 20-something years of her life. She did grow up in a rough area, obviously, and that obviously would have toughened her up. However, she did not have any formal training in the Force or anything by that age, as opposed to Starkiller, who was born on Kashyyyk and was taken from his father's hands when he was very young by Darth Vader. And Starkiller, unlike Rey, was trained from a very young age in combat in a brutal fashion. Obviously Darth Vader would be one of the harshest teachers anyone could ever have. And not only was he trained in the ways of the Force, but he was specifically trained in the ways of the dark side, which any true Star Wars fan will know is combatively superior to the light. So, let's look at some of Rey's accomplishments. She was able to defeat Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens with just about zero real formal training in Force-related or lightsaber dueling-related abilities. It's true that Kylo Ren was injured at the time. However, it didn't totally cripple him, and somebody who is proficient in the ways of the dark side will know how to convert that pain and anger into further power. So if anything, he should have actually been able to go beast mode on Rey and wipe the floor with her, considering his injury didn't completely take him out. But she defeated Kylo, who had been trained in the ways of the dark side by Snoke and in the ways of the light by Luke Skywalker. He essentially had two of the most knowledgeable, powerful teachers in the galaxy during that era, possibly ever. And yet he was defeated by Rey pretty soundly. And Rey was also able to use a Jedi mind trick without any training, which that shouldn't happen, and she was able to use Force Lightning without any training, which is also kind of absurd. So, we can establish that Rey had very minimal training. She was not taught to do a lot of these things. She just magically knew how to do them. She, you can say she intuited it, but you shouldn't be able to do that. Starkiller, on the other hand, like I said, he was brought up by Vader from an extremely young age. Vader put him through the most torturous training sessions imaginable. I remember reading in the book that there was a time he broke Starkiller's arms and forced him to train that way. And he was also forced he was also forced to train with his dueling droid proxy. So Starkiller, by the time we get to the era, where you're playing as him in the game, or the era where you're reading about him in the books, he's already been trained for many, many years in an extremely brutal fashion. Yes, he does also have a high force potential. I don't believe his potential is as high as Yoda or the Skywalkers, because he was actually afraid of Yoda when he met him on Dagobah. I put him somewhere in the same realm as Mace Windu or Count Dooku in terms of raw force potential. But he was trained in the dark side from a very young age, and so by the time he was in his late teens, he had already honed a lot of those abilities. He was somebody who was pretty close to meeting his full potential, and in the dark side specifically. So, from my point of view, he earned every victory, every incredible force ability he exhibited in the games and the books. I think he was like 4 years old when he started training. So, yeah, and I think he was 17 in the game, so that's 13 years of training by the time he defeats Ram Koda, Shakti, and eventually Darth Vader. And like we said earlier, what real training did Rey have by The Force Awakens? None. She knew how to. She was self-taught in the ways of using her weapon, which I guess you just call it a staff. But yeah, she had no formal training in the Force, and I think she only obtained minimal training from Luke Skywalker in the 7th movie. So, the fact of the matter is she was keeping up with Kylo Ren by movies 8 and 9 with very little training, which is just absurd. Especially considering Kylo has Skywalker blood in him on top of his extensive training. So, yeah, trying to draw an equivalency between Rey and Starkiller or Galen Marek is completely absurd. Trying to frame things in a way that Starkiller has, the same or very similar, natural abilities to just know how to use a lightsaber or the Force in advanced ways, it's ridiculous. They really couldn't be more different in how they were, in terms of how they obtained their abilities. So that's my perspective as to why it's really ridiculous to refer to Starkiller as a Gary Stu, as if he's the male equivalent of Rey. So, yeah, that's all I have to say about that for right now. For the few people who might watch this video, feel free to, leave your own perspective in the comments, whether you agree or disagree with me, and, maybe it'll spark a discussion. So, yeah, that's all for now. Have a good day.